this week's parsha, after the Jewish people refused to go to Eretz Yisrael, and they hear the punishment that is visited upon them. So there's a portion of the Jewish people that then changes their mind. And the next morning, tens of thousands, according to the Medrash, 30,000, appear before Moshe by Apilu Lalo Sohora. And they're the mapilim. They're the ones that are going to be the ones that will go to Eretz Yisrael and ignore, so to speak, what Moshe said and what heaven said. So Moshe's response to them was, don't do it. Al talu, don't go up, because the Lord is not with you. And because the Lord is not with you, the Canaanites will destroy you. And Moshe told them, Vihi lo tzlach. This plan of yours, this idea of yours, lo tzlach, will be unsuccessful. It will not have success. The Torah records that they tried to do it anyway, and that they were destroyed. There's a difference of opinion in the Talmud who were the corpses that were revived by the Novi Yechezkel in his famous vision. So some say that they were the ones that left Egypt early, and some say that they were the mapilim, who tried to go to Eretz Yisrael and were unsuccessful. That is the narrative in the Torah. A very strange story. So there was a great Hasidic Rebbe who originally was a Masnagid. Many of the great Rebbes are people who didn't start out as Hasidim. There's an advantage to that. And so his name was Rabbi Tzadok Rabinovitz, Rabbi Tzadok ha-cohen, and he was a Rebbe in Lublin. And he was a Talmud of the Izbischer Rebbe, famous Rebbe's, the Leiner family. In fact, it was the Izbischer Rebbe that made him a chassid. He lived a very complicated and tragic life, but he was one of the great geniuses in the Jewish world. We have over 70 books that he wrote. And lately, the last 30, 40 years, he's had a great revival, both in Hasidic and non-Hasidic circles. And he's a very seminal thinker, very original, very different. And the Hasidim, therefore, have a hard time digesting him, because he doesn't fit the prescribed narrative. So he comments here, a great comment. The Gemara says, what are the darshaning psukim, that if a Rasha comes to heaven to do tshuva, appeals to heaven to do tshuva, so if the Rasha is a far gone Rasha, he's an habitual criminal, so then heaven doesn't listen to him. His prayers are not heard. Very difficult concept in the Gemara. His prayers are not heard. and they base it on psukim in Tehillim. Rosh Yomar to the Rosh, he'll say, "What are you doing here? I don't want to hear you." And there's a Gemara regarding Elisha ben Avuya, Acher, who was the Talmud of Reb Meir, and went out and became a traitor to the Jewish people and an apostate. So, but he remained a great Talmud Chacham. I mean, intellectually, still knew a lot of Torah. So the Gemara tells us that he and Rabbi Meir were once walking on the Shabbat together, and Acher was riding on a donkey or an animal, and Rabbi Meir naturally was walking. And they came to the Tchum Shabbos. They came to the limit of how far Rabbi Meir could walk. So Acher said to him, "Meir, chazor boch." Meir, turn around. And Meir turned around and said to Acher, "Gamato chazor boch." You also do tshuva. You also turn around. Because Meir was convinced that Acher was aware that all of this was nonsense. So Acher told him, "In any yochel, I can't. Ki shomati ma'achorei apargud." I heard an echo from heaven. Apparently there are leakers in heaven too. So I heard ma'achorei apargud, shuvu bonim shovavim, the Navi says, "You wild children, do tshuva, chutz me'acher." But Acher, I'm not going to let you. So he said, I heard in heaven that they're never going to accept my tshuva, so why should I bother? So that's the end of the story. So the Balei Musar, the great men of Jewish thought, said Meir that Acher was wrong. He should have done tshuva anyway. Who cares what they say in heaven? Lo b'shamayim, it's not up to them. What, you want to do tshuva, break down the wall. So what if they say chutz me'acher? It's a remarkable view. So tzadok says the same type of idea here. God said, you're all going to die in the desert. You're not going to Eretz Yisrael. They get up in the morning, the mapilim, and they say, pretty much, who cares what God says? Who cares what Moshe says? We're going to go. Vayapilu lalo sohora. Moshe warns them. Moshe says, Al talu, don't go up, vihi lo titzlach. So Reb Tzadok says, we find in Chazal always that when it says vihi, it's a limitation. This one won't work, but it doesn't apply to anything else. Vihi is localized. So Reb Tzadok says, there at that time and in that place, and with their motivation, they could not be successful. That's what Moshe told them. Moshe didn't denigrate the idea of the mapilim. He said their idea is correct. Let's go. And really, we shouldn't listen to what heaven has to say. But vihi, I know that this plan now, lo titzlach, it's not going to be successful. And therefore we shouldn't pursue it. They ignored Moshe, and out of that came the disaster that they were destroyed. So Tzadok says, Now this is so controversial that this paragraph from Reb Tzadok was taken out of all of his works by the Hasidim because it didn't fit the narrative. But in our time, over the last 45, 50 years, all the original things have been put back in. Apparently our generation is immune to anything. So we don't have to worry about that. So Reb Tzadok says, V'hi lo titzlach, he said. Then it wasn't matzliach to go to Eretz Yisrael against the wishes of heaven. But he said there'll come a day, and he's talking about his day, in the beginning of the 20th century. So the Gemara in Sota says that in the Ikvus of the Mashiach, in the time that precedes the Mashiach and the end of days, when the process of redemption begins, so it says chutzpah yazgeh. Chutzpah will triumph. There'll be a lot of chutzpah, brazenness in the world. So he says, afilu chutzpah yazgeh klape shmaya. Even chutzpah against heaven will work. And he says, V'zeh yameinu eile, this is, we live in this time, ikvus of the Mashiach, the generations before the Mashiach. So therefore, who cares? Everybody says, don't go, don't do it, and chutzpah yazgeh, do it. Because now it will be matzliach. Now he wrote this over a century ago, when there was a very negligible population here, with no dreams of a state, and when most of the establishment, the Jewish people, both secular and religious, opposed the idea. But he said that there'll come a time, Yameinu Eile, that chutzpah yazgeh, the chutzpah will help, and it'll be matzliach. It will happen anyway. So to speak, you'll force heaven's hand, and it will happen. So that's a pretty brazen statement. But it's a far-seeing statement. And it's in line with what we said about Acher. Do tshuva anyway. What do you care what heaven says? And that attitude to do what's right and not to, so to speak, shrink from our destiny and what we know is right simply because of the fact that somehow it doesn't have unanimous consent. So that's a very, very strong message. So you can see this, it's in Siman Mem Vov, in the Sefer Tzidkas HaTzadik, which is one of his 70 Svarim. And so now they republished it. There's a Tzidkas HaTzadik Amole, and there a number of times it's been republished now. It's very popular. And it really is insightful, very insightful. Now I have to give you, in the interest of transparency, which is also currently very popular, is that my grandmother was his niece. He was the only chassid in the family. Everybody else was a misnagid. But she was his niece. And in our family, we had his gartel, which probably would be worth a lot of money today on the auction block. But somehow, I don't know how it disappeared, but we don't know. I don't have it anymore. But that was my attachment to him. That's why I never looked in Chassidisches for him until I was I think, past 30. But, so I built up the necessary immunity, but but I was interested in him because of the fact that somehow I'm related to him. And if you have a chance ever to learn any of his svarim, it will open up your mind and your heart to the greatness of Torah and the greatness of what the Torah stands for. Rabbi Chananya ben Akash Omer, Otsa Kodesh Baruch Hu L'Zakos Yisrael, V'chach Hir B'Leim Torah Mitzvot, Shem Ha'anoch V'Yetno Yisrael